This morning, I believe it's pretty unique, and it's going to be interesting. And this is how much Pastor Rocky and I love each other. And this is how we show how we deal with conflict. So I want to talk to you about what is just happening in our country and how should we respond. And would you not agree with me that it's kind of unfortunate about really what's happening in our country today in regards to politics and seeing our leaders and country the way it is? And it seems like this division that is happening in our country is pretty intense. Would you not agree?
Amen.
And the bickering and the fights within our leaders is taking place. And constantly slandering each other. Would you not agree?
You gotta watch the face, you see that?
And the craziness of the upcoming election.
Yeah.
And people are just so dishonoring, and it just our leaders are just so bad, it seems like. And the problem with our moral values, and
Always gotta change.
but here's what I need to tell you though, that he's Italian and I'm Filipino, just in case you don't know. And so far as I know, there's no Italian winning any.
There are some, we just haven't heard of them in a while.
But the last time I checked, we had Manny Pacquiao,
I don't see a,
who's Filipino and just winning all kinds of
I don't
fights.
see a Filipino boxing movie.
And then imagine this: the backbiting
Yeah.
and the backstabbing. Isn't it real? This is what we are seeing, and these are some of the things that our children are seeing, and the examples
Amen.
we're giving them.
Yes, Lord.
Thank you, Pastor Rocky. And why is this? You might ask, why? Well, a lot of times, it has something to do with our freedom. Now, think about this. Because of the freedom we have to do so, meaning this freedom that we were given, somehow we've taken this to the extreme. We've taken this freedom to the extreme, and a lot of times we use our freedom even if it means sinning against God. Now think about that. For example, just because I have the freedom of speech does not mean that I get to say whatever I want, to slander people and dishonor those in authorities just because I don't agree or because I'm frustrated about some of the things he's doing or she's doing. It doesn't give me the right.
Yes.
And how should we respond in all of what's happening in our country today, and especially as the election coming up this November? How should we respond? Well, my job as your pastor is this. There's only one job. My job is not to tell you who to vote. My job is not to tell you what political party I follow. That's not my job. I only have one job, and my job is this: to teach you God's truth and godly principles so that you can make godly decisions for yourself, for your family, and for your country. Amen. That's my job. And so, it's not my job to tell you whether I follow the Democratic Party or Republican Party or Independent Party. No, my job is to simply tell you and teach you godly truths and principles so that you can make the right decision for yourself. And so here are some of the things that I want you and I to consider today as we are about to have this election coming up in November, okay? And number one is this: don't be labeled. Don't be labeled. We should not identify ourselves if we follow the donkey group, which is the Democrats, or the elephant group, which is the Republican, or the independent, whatever. We should only be identified as followers of the Lion and the Lamb, which is Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Would you not agree with me?
Yes, amen.
We are Christians and not a Democrat or a Republican.
That's right.
Very good.
When you come up to me and say, "Are you a Republican?" No, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Yeah.
Are you a Democrat? No, I'm a child of God. If you're going to label yourself, friends, maybe consider identifying yourself as as simple as this, as a follower of Jesus Christ, and not a political party. I was kind of embarrassed to say this, but you know me, I just tell you what's happening, and I'm kind of vulnerable about things, and so that we can learn from this. My wife and I, we attended this local pastor's prayer/luncheon. And this was back when we were electing a president a couple years ago. And during the luncheon, believe it or not, some of the pastors, they began to identify themselves as this party, that party, I'm voting for this and that. And then they began to argue themselves, and they started this huge, out of control argument. And all of a sudden, I felt like the Spirit of God sometimes you feel like it just left. And I felt so dry, and I'm like, God, what is going on here? My wife and I were so exhausted. We left there just so frustrated. I was like, these are pastors bickering and just arguing about who and what. And I'm like, God, pastors, are you really serious about this? And the reason why that took place is simply because they began to identify themselves about this party and that party and this and that, and they began to argue. And when all along they should say, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ, aren't you? And all of a sudden, if I say I'm a follower of Christ, I'm not a political party, blah, 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 whatever. If I say I'm a political party this and that, all of a sudden, well, I'm this, I don't agree with you, and all of a sudden, there's an argument. But if I say I'm a follower of Jesus Christ, what about you? Oh, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. And all of a sudden, there's unity.
Amen.
Because both of us are all followers of Jesus Christ. We're not a follower of a political party. We are simply a follower of Jesus Christ. Are you with me?
Yes.
And so don't be labeled. Number 2 is this. Honor authority. Honor it. Honor authority. You might not be for President Trump. That's okay. That's okay.
Amen.
But don't forget this one thing, though. If you're not for President Trump or for any elected officials, whether we like it or not, he's our president.
That's right.
Whether you like it or not, whether I like it or not, he's the president.
Yes. Yeah.
But here's the thing. If you have a problem with that, you have a problem with God.
Right.
Let me repeat. If you have a problem with that, you have a problem with God. Why? Well, Romans chapter 13 tells us this, verse 1. Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. Look at the underlined. The authorities that exist today have been established by who? By me? By you? By the American people? No! By God himself. Right there. Daniel 2:21, it says, God changes times and seasons. He deposes kings and raises up others. It's God.
That's right.
The reason why we have President Trump, whether you agree with me or not, it's the Bible. He's the one who established that authority. He's the one who placed President Trump there. Whether you voted for him or not, he's the president. And you might argue with God. Well, you're not going to win. Just want to let you know. But do you know why I know we will be okay? Whether who sits in the White House. You know why? Because God is the one who placed them there. That's why I know we'll be okay. And here's the thing. You know why I know we will be okay? It's because number one, my job is to trust God in His plan and purposes. That's my job. That's your job. Because God placed him there or placed any officials in office, I have to trust him. That's it. That's my job.
Yes.
Number two is that God can work regardless who sit in the office. Can you honestly say, oh my goodness, so-and-so is in the office, we are in trouble? Really? Or can God work regardless who's in the office? Absolutely. It doesn't matter. Why? Because God is in control. We might think that we are in control. We might think that President so-and-so or this elected official is in... No. I want to tell you, God is in control.
Amen.
Number three is that my hope is not who sits in the White House, but in God alone.
Hallelujah.
And you might say, well, Pastor Angelo, you don't understand, but the economy. Well, hello. It didn't say that President Trump is the owner of the cattle on the 1,000 hills. Did it? Or so-and-so is the owner of the cattle on the 1,000 hills? It says God is the owner of the cattle on the 1,000 hills. God is the owner of everything. And so if I am driven because of the economy or whatever, well, where's my trust in the Lord?
Right.
Where's my trust? I'm saying if I vote for so-and-so, then our economy is going to be better. Well, then I'm trusting on the men instead of trusting on God. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Is this okay?
Yeah.
We are responsible, friends, to submit and honor those in authority, and that is so biblical. That is so biblical. Don't ever use your freedom to the extreme. The freedom that was given to you, you are responsible, and I'm responsible for that.
Hallelujah.
So don't take it lightly. Here's the thing. 1 Peter 2:13 tells us this. Peter said, submit yourselves to the authority of every human institution for the sake of who? The Lord, to honor His name. So in other words, if you submit, if you honor, you are actually honoring the Lord. Really? Oh yeah.
Yes. Amen.
Whether it is to a king as one in a position of power, or to governors are sent by him to bring punishment to those who do wrong and to praise and encourage those who do right. For it is the will of God that by doing right you may silence the ignorance and irresponsible criticisms of foolish people. Look at this. Live as free people. He says that. Live as free people. But do not use your freedom, here we go, as a cover or pretext for what? Evil. But use it and live as bond servants of God. Show respect for some people that you like. All people. Treat them what? With honor. Love the brotherhood of believers. Fear God. Honor the king. Honor the king. And here in America, we get in trouble because we don't understand what the Bible teaches us because of the freedom of speech we have. And so I can just slander the president or whoever in office. Not according to the Word of God.
No.
I don't. Peter, do you know that Peter wrote this at the time of Nero? And let me just tell you about Nero at the time. Nero, he is best known for his debaucheries, political murders, persecutions of Christians. And so, do you know that in it was under Nero's leadership that Peter, Apostle Peter, was crucified upside down. And then Peter would say, honor the king.
That's right.
Because Peter understood authority. He understood it. And here's what happens when we dishonor those in authorities. You ready for this? Romans 13:2 says, consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. Wow. I don't know about you, but I don't like the sound of that judgment part. That if I dishonor, if I don't submit, if I rebel, then God is going to hold me accountable. He's going to judge me.
Right.
This is a serious matter, isn't it? Now, I'm not talking about just the political or the office of the president or the governor or the mayor, whatever. No, I'm talking about every authority that God placed over us. Well, for example, parents. They're an authority over me. My parents. Right? Your parents. Well, here's another authority. Teachers. Right? Young people? Teachers are in authority.
That's right. Amen.
Well, guess what? Cops? They're an authority. Do you know that I did not care about authority at all because of the freedom I have? Right? I didn't care about my supervisor at job. To tell you, they are in authority. The managers, whether you like him or not, you better not speak against them because they are in authority. You have to find a way to honor them. And so here's the thing. So I'm just going to be vulnerable because I was really bad with this. How many times have this happened to you when you read a passage, you kind of like, you just read it and you're like, okay, whatever, but didn't really connect? I'll tell you a story. So I was so dishonoring to any authority over my life. My parents, I didn't care. You know my story. I didn't care about them. So I didn't care about honoring them. Well, guess what? I go to school. I didn't care about my teachers. I didn't care about honoring them. I did not care, right? And then I go to work. I didn't care about my supervisor, my manager. I would dishonor them just like that. I would dishonor everybody. And then I become a Christian. Well, guess what? I brought that attitude to my new faith. I did not honor my pastor. In fact, God is so gracious to me. God is so gracious to me. I think God is so gracious to Angelo. You know why? Because when I took over the church, this is what I did to my pastor. So he calls me one day and just to see how I'm doing. And then he started giving me some advice. I said, you know what? I don't need you. I don't need your advice. I mean, when I took over this church, it was a small church, blah, 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 blah. And I just, you don't know what you're doing. That was my attitude. Can you believe that? Yeah. That was me. Why? Because I did not understand the intensity of what God said about submitting and honoring authorities. Because of my freedom. I mean, I grew up in this country over freedom of speech, or freedom of this and that, and I just went all over with that. And so I had a problem with authorities. I did not like cops because I was bad and I just didn't like them. And I thought that they're just there to arrest me or something, or constantly just trying to find someone like me. And so one day, this is kind of funny. And so one night I was walking, and remember those times when the trench coat? So young people, you probably don't know the trench coats, but that's okay. But it was a long coat, and it was black. I was wearing those leather, thick, black, and I was gothic, meaning I had everything black. Even I had an eyeliner. My lips were black with, I would put black lipstick and I would put this dog, whatever color. And then you got to do the walk. You got to have the walk. When you're wearing that and you're like that, you got to do the walk. You can't miss the walk. And so you got to have the walk. And so one night, I was wearing this trench coat, black everything, and I was doing the walk, right? In my neighborhood. Well, my neighborhood was not a good neighborhood. And so guess what? While doing the walk, all of a sudden I see these lights. I'm like, what's up? Well, guess what? What's up? The cop, he grabbed me and just spread my legs and put me on top of the hood of his car. And he began to touch me. Meaning, he was trying to see if I had weapons. So anyway, and so that was my experience with cops, and I hated them. And so for me to think about honoring them, no way. And then I become a Christian. Dishonored my pastors, whatever, any authorities, even our denomination officers. I was just bitter about everything. And then one day, my wife and I were attending this pastors' conference. And maybe some of you know John Bevere, but John Bevere wrote this book about kingdom authority. And so the man started preaching about kingdom authority, about honoring and about this. And then he began to go through these passages. And I'm telling you, I was like, my God, what? I've been so bad, and I've been so arrogant about all these things. I've been so dishonoring, and then God began to show me of everybody in authority over my life that I've dishonored. And when he gave the altar call, guess who was the first person up there? Was me, weeping. And I asked God, why have I done that? Changed my heart, and I repented of my sins. And I said to God, from now on, I'm going to do whatever it takes to honor those in authorities. Every authority. I'll give you an example. I love doing this. And so when I'm in a restaurant or Starbucks and I see a cop or a couple of them in authority, or even the firefighters, right? Oh man, I love doing this. I would come up to the waitress and I would say, I want to pay for their meal. And so I would pay for their meal, and then I would just come up there, not to say, hey, I paid for your meal. Look at me. I'm a nice guy, all right? Right? No. I simply would say, I just want to let you know, thank you. Thank you for your service. The fact that you're trying to protect us. And a lot of times you're not appreciated. I just want to let you know, thank you. And I'm praying for you. And I would just leave without telling them that I paid for their meal. And then my pastor, when we bought this building about 7 years ago, we had a big celebration. We invited all of our district officials and pastors all over, and my pastors were here. During that time, I felt like the Holy Spirit spoke to me, this is your opportunity to honor your pastors. So they were sitting here, and it was the most emotional night I've experienced ever in my life. I began weeping in front of everybody, and I said, I've dishonored these people. I've dishonored them. I was young and just dumb, ignorant and arrogant. And I looked at them and I said, I need to ask for your forgiveness in front of everybody. Would you forgive me? And they said yes. It was the most incredible night I've ever experienced in my life. I'll never forget it. And today, my job is to honor everyone in authority. I'm the senior pastor, right? Right? I'm the senior pastor. But you know what? I honor Pastor Rocky. It doesn't matter if I'm over him, whatever, in position. No, he's a pastor. I honor him. I honor Pastor Joe. And not only Pastor Joe, but I honor Erna. I honor Debbie. I honor Pastor Jerlyn and Mark. I honor all of our pastors. I honor the elders. Because it's the right thing to do.
Hallelujah.
Are you with me?
Amen. Yes, sir.
So now, let me ask you this question. What happens when someone in authority asks you to do something that will cause you to sin? That's a good question. That's a fair question. Would you not agree? So what happens? If someone in authority would ask me to do something that would cause me to sin, what do I do? Well, let me say this. You are accountable to God first.
That's right.
You are accountable to God first. Look at this. Acts 5 is a story when the disciples were preaching about Christ. And the religious people didn't like this, the disciples, these men preaching about this Christ, whom we're supposed to kill, right? And so they were so offended, and so they arrested the disciples so that they would stop preaching. Well, that night God did a miracle, and somehow the angel came there and pretty much did a miracle and got them out. And guess what they did? The disciples did not stop preaching about Christ. And so as soon as they got up, they started preaching again about this Christ whom you killed. And so the religious people didn't like this. And so they arrested them again. And so here's the story. The apostles were brought in and made to appear before the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin is a group of people, religious people. And kind of in a courthouse, kind of a deal with a bunch of religious folks. And to be questioned by the high priest. The high priest is like the Pope. Can you imagine being questioned by the Pope? And so this is the high priest. This is the guy. And then he said, we gave you strict orders not to teach in this thing. Yet you have filled Jerusalem with your teaching and are determined to make us guilty of this man's blood. And then look at what Peter and the other apostles said. Underlined. We must obey God rather than what? Human beings. In other words, God commanded us to preach the gospel. God said, right, go and preach to all nations. And that's what we're doing. We're preaching the gospel, the good news, and telling people about this hope that they can find in Jesus. And so because it is a command of God, you're telling us to stop? Wait a minute. We'd rather obey God than you. I'm sorry. I honor you, but I'm accountable to God first. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
And so, you remember Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? The three amigos? And so we're going to call this guy Nebuchadnezzar, that I'm always constantly having a hard time mentioning his name, so we're going to call him Nebo. So Nebo made this image of himself, right? And he tells the Babylonians that as soon as you hear the trumpet sound, you're all going to bow down and worship this image I've created, right? Well, the trumpet sounded, everyone bowed down and worshiped this image that he made except Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And so the king saw this and he was so furious, and he took the three. Didn't I commanded you to bow down and worship this image I've made for myself when you hear the trumpet sound? And the three amigos were like, well, king, we just want to let you know that we are accountable to God first. Because what you said is going to cause me to sin. And we're not for that. Because we honor you, king. We're here to serve you. But you're asking us to do something that is against what God has commanded me to do. Not to worship any other image. That's his command. So we can't, king. So the king was so furious that they took the three into the fiery furnace, and he was so mad. He was so angry that he basically turned up the heat, not one time, not two, three, but seven times hotter than it was. The dude was mad. Well, this is their attitude. The God we serve here in Israel can save us. And you're like, dude, are you out of your mind? You're about to go there. You might just want to just bow down and worship this, right? That would be probably the easiest thing to do if you are in that situation, right? Just, dude, it's okay. God will forgive you anyway. Just when you do that, just ask God for forgiveness. He'll forgive you, right? Not according to this story. They're like, no, we're not going to compromise. Because a lot of times we find ourselves compromising with truth. We can't.
Amen.
Because God is going to hold us accountable
Yes.
if we compromise. There's no compromising in Jesus.
Amen.
It doesn't work with him. It's whether you're for him or not for him.
Right.
There's no middle ground. Whether you're for him and not. Right? I want to encourage you, inspire you, be for him. So, then the last thing I want to talk to you about is this, is pray for your country.
Yes.
Pray for your country. 1 Timothy chapter 2 tells us this. I urge then, first of all, the petitions, prayers, intercessions, and thanksgiving be made for the people you like. No? For all. Including the people you don't like. Do you know the best way to really deal with anger or bitterness or not liking anybody? Jesus said, oh, yeah, this is the way to handle this kind of things. When you have this bitterness or problem with others and you're treating people as if they're your enemies, here's the solution. Pray for them.
Yes, right.
Not only pray for them, do good to them.
Yes, wake you right up.
And you're like, not in our country. We're not. No, we're not from this country. We are, but we're not. We are citizens of not of this country. We are citizens of a heavenly one. Don't forget that. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Amen.
And so we were commanded to pray and not talk negative or share our minds like what we like to do a lot of times. Why this person and that person is terrible and not good, blah, 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 blah. We are simply called to pray. 4 things out of this message. It says petition. What does that look like? God, I'm petitioning. It's just that you would just bring an awakening in our country. In fact, that was my prayer today, this morning, as I was spending time with God. I said, God, I pray for a spiritual awakening. I pray that you would raise up godly leaders, that you would raise up Christians that would really just stand for what is right and what is true. That was my prayer. I was petitioning God. Prayers is the next one. All kinds of prayers. Intercession. I was interceding for our president today. I'm responsible to pray for him.
Amen.
My prayer is not something so negative about, I don't like that man. God, just do something that would hurt him. No.
Right.
God, bless this man.
Yes.
Because you appointed him into leadership. Bless him and his wife.
Yes.
Bless his family, children.
Yes.
Bless his leadership.
Amen.
Bless him. And then it says, the purpose of our prayer is what? So that we may live peaceful and quiet lives in all godliness and holiness. Right? That's the goal. Because in arguments, bickering, and all that, fights, there's no godliness and holiness in that. Right? Christians are called to a higher standard, friends. We are called to a higher standard. Don't get involved in arguments about politics. We are not called to do that, but we are called to be peacemakers. That's what the Bible says. Look at how Jesus honored the authority he was under. You ready for this? In the book of Matthew chapter 22 tells us a story about this religious people just trying to trap Jesus. And so here's what happened. One of them said, "Teacher, we know that you are a man of integrity and that you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. You aren't swayed by others because you pay no attention to who they are. Well, now tell us, what is your opinion? Is it right to pay the tax to Caesar or not?" Jesus, knowing their evil intent, said, "You hypocrites, why are you trying to trap me? show me the coin used for paying the tax. They brought it to him, and he asked them, whose image is this? And whose inscription? They said, well, it's Caesar's. Okay. Then, so give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's.
Hallelujah.
Jesus did not get involved in these arguments. He understood, even though he was the Son of the living God, he understood authority. He's the one who placed authorities. And so, he's not going to break something that he placed, right, in position, whatever. No, he's going to honor that. I'm under authority because I live in this earth right now. Even though I'm the Son of God, I understand authority. And that is someone who understood authority. So, I feel that some Christians are disheartened and discouraged because of what they are seeing happening in our country. And they are tempted to disengage or to be withdrawn. Don't. Don't, friends. Be encouraged. Trust God. Put your hope in Him. Right? Someone said that they feel like a stranger in America. Have you felt that way? Like as if you're a stranger in America? Well, you're supposed to feel like a stranger in America. Why? Because look at this. Hebrews 11:13 tells us, all these people were still living by faith when they died. They're talking about the believers, the followers of Jesus Christ. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. People who say such things shows that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for He has prepared a city for them. Friends, look at me. You and I are supposed to feel like a stranger or a foreigner in this country. We're supposed to, because we're not here permanently. We are only here temporarily. Our eternal destination is heaven. That is our country. That is our permanent country. So don't even feel like that as if this is it. No. Friends, if this is it, God have mercy. Can you imagine living at a place where we're constantly having to deal with sin and murder and bickering and fighting and all this stuff? Oh my goodness. I would just say, God, kill me now if this is it.
Yeah.
Well, thank God it's not it. We thank God that there's a better place for us waiting. And that is called heaven.
Amen.
But for the meantime, you and I are responsible to live according to righteousness and to holiness as followers of Jesus Christ, not a follower of a specific political party.
Amen.
Are you with me?
Amen.
Our responsibility, folks, is to vote and to pray for this upcoming election. That's our responsibility. Not based on what you think or how you feel, but always based on biblical truths and godly principles that you have been learning all this time from God. Yes. Friends, how I feel and what I think, remember, it comes from a broken, sinful, distorted, imperfect view of things. Why would I trust my feelings and what I think? Are you kidding me?
Amen.
Why would I trust me? I cannot trust me. I can only trust God who is perfect. Are you with me? Yes. So let us just do this the right thing. Don't trust your own instinct or trusting your own feelings or what you think. Forget that. Forget it. Because we are so broken. What we trust is the Bible. What we trust is God's Word. Because that is the truth.
Hallelujah. Praise you, Jesus.
You receive this today?
Amen.
So, Trust God and vote. Pastor Rocky said this. How many of you have served the military? Because we had a lot. So John back there. Anybody else? The first service we had a lot. Pastor Rocky said this. Our soldiers made a great sacrifice to give us the freedom we have today.
Yes,
So let's honor them by voting.
yes, yes.
So, what did we learn? You are a Christian, a child of God, a follower of Christ. That is who you are. Right? That's who you are. It doesn't matter, honor, authority, always. It doesn't matter. You are accountable and responsible to God first. You are. And this today, friends, is a teaching from the Bible.
Yes.
How should we respond? Friends, God in our country. We cannot eliminate God in our country.
Amen.
Okay. Friends, the hope of this country is not the White House. The hope of this country is the church.
Amen. Thank you, Lord. Thank you.
So I'm going to put that responsibility on us. We are responsible. We are the hope of this country and of this world. We are the agents of Jesus. Right? We are. We are the hands and feet. We are everything. We are called to go and preach. We are called to give hope. We are called to disciple. We are called to be the light. We are called to be the salt. So what is Jesus saying? Jesus is saying, want to let you know you are the hope through me.
Praise God.
You are the hope. And so do a better job of representing me. That's my prayer, is that you and I would do a better job representing Him. You receive this today?
Yes, sir.
All right. Would you bow your heads and close your eyes for me, please? And I just want to